What is up, everyone? We are back. Today we are talking about the top 10 new cards from March of the Machines. Let's check it out. All right, everyone. So March of the Machines is coming out in a little bit over a week. So now that we have all the cards spoiled, means it's time to look at the top 10 best cards of the new set. So let's get started. So number 10, we are looking at Nahiri's Warcrafting. So this is a 3 mana spell. It's a sorcery, 1 red red. It says it deals 5 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. And look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the excess damage dealt this way. You may exile one of those cards and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may play the exiled card this turn. So, this is basically a early game. It's going to just be a removal that can kill pretty much everything in Standard, with Shieldred kind of being the big boogeyman of Standard in the last set, which had 5 toughness and was very hard to kill. So now this spell will kill Shieldred. And on top of that, if you need to use this for something smaller than Shieldred, like I don't know, Rafine or Athalia or something like that, then you are going to get to look at the top X cards of your deck and get some value off of that. Worst case scenario, in a lot of cases, you'll just play a land off of this. So it's still likely to be, in a lot of cases, a 2-for-1. And late game for sure, it will definitely be a 2-for-1. However, sometimes early game, it's just going to be a 1-for-1 removal. But it is a good removal that hits pretty much everything that is played in Standard right now. So seems pretty good. It also seemed like there were not that many ways to interact with battles. So especially if you have a deck that relies a lot on flipping your battles, then this might be a good card for kind of dealing with the battle, removing the counters, and getting it to flip for you pretty quickly. So that's why I thought this one is very good. So any deck that is red that has battles in it, you're probably going to want to look into trying this card out in your deck. All right, so that's number 10. If we go to the next one, number 9, Thalia and Gitrog. So this is 1 white, black, and a green for a 4/4 first strike death touch. And it says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. So even the turn that you play this, you can play an additional land. And that is the reason why this is at number 9 for me, is because even if the opponent has it ready, their removal spell, you play this, you actually get the priority to play your land before they get to remove it, because this has no triggered ability or anything when it enters the battlefield. So therefore, as soon as it enters the battlefield, you've got priority to play the land before they can remove it. So at the very worst, in a lot of cases, this is going to be play a really good creature and get to play an extra land and ramp yourself. So that is pretty valuable, especially if you have bigger stuff in your deck. You could even play this in a Atraxa deck that is playing it in the fairway, because it shares a lot of the same colors. And then if they can't remove this, then whenever you get to attack with it, you get to sacrifice a creature or land. So you could sacrifice the land you just played, and then you draw a card. And also, it has the ability that creatures or non-basics your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. So that is also going to affect them negatively, giving you more chances to attack in without being blocked, without being stopped, and getting that extra damage in. So it is definitely a very strong card that needs to be removed. And the main reason why it's on the top 10 list is because it does have that land ability on the first turn that it's played. So makes it a little bit more, I guess, like less getting blown out from a removal spell. All right, number 8, Archpriest of Shadows. So this card was one that didn't seem like that powerful when you first read it, but the more I've been brewing and building decks, the more I realize that this effect is actually really, really powerful. And so why is it so powerful? It reminds me a lot of Michiko's Reign of Truth, which is the 2-mana enchantment that pumps your creatures based on artifacts and enchantments, and then at the end it flips into a creature. And the reason why that one is so good is because the opponents often have to kill the thing that you're pumping and not the enchantment with Michiko. So they waste a lot of removal spells because of that. And this has a similar type effect where you have some creature on the board, maybe turn 3 or turn 2 or turn 4 or whatever. And then when this comes down on turn 5, you put the backup on that other creature, and the opponent is forced to kill that other creature instead of this one because it's going to get the ability to reanimate something. And so you force them to use the removal on that creature, which means they might not have another removal for this creature. And if they do kill this creature, then you can also reanimate it with the creature that you targeted with the backup. So yeah, it's really a strong ability. Basically forces the opponent to have 2 removal spells, or they're going to be in a lot of trouble because you get to reanimate a creature from your graveyard. And yeah, because of that, it just feels like it's one of the best reanimation spells in the set right now. Because it's pretty resilient. You've got 2 shots to reanimate with 1 card, whereas like Cruelty of Gix is only 1 shot. And there's a few other like 5 mana reanimations that again are only 1 shot. So it feels pretty strong. There's some creature synergies as well that can do some nice things with it. So I put this at the number 8 spot because yeah, that resiliency makes it pretty good. And Death Touch is nice as well. All right, next one, Zimone and Dina. This is a 3 mana 3/4 with some really strong text on here. It is Sultai color, so a little bit hard to cast, but we're gonna see why that's a good thing. And the ability says whenever you draw your second card each turn, the opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, so a drain for 2. And then you can also sacrifice another creature, draw a card, and put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So kind of a growth spiral effect. And if you have 8 or more lands, then you do it again. So you get 2 growth spirals if you have 8 or more lands. And why is this so good? Well, the ability to draw a card and ramp you is a really strong ability, one that hasn't been reprinted into standard. And then every time you do that, you get that drain effect, so it's actually compounded with that. You could have a deck kind of built around wanting these draw synergies. And the most important thing, which I think makes this in the top 10, is because we got Tyvar Jubilant Brawler recently. It's an sorry, not an artifact, a Planeswalker, 3 mana Planeswalker that says that you can activate abilities as though they had haste of your creatures. And so you can get that down, and then next turn, on turn 4, play this one, meaning you can sacrifice something right away. And I think that is going to make this a lot more powerful and more likely to go off. And if you can get it to trigger even just 1 time, then you're in a pretty good spot. So yeah, I think because of that, it means that there might be some sort of deck where you have Tyvar, which is a green-black, fits into the Sultai deck. You might have a few other like nice 2-drop creatures that have that you're willing to sacrifice with this Dina, or have a good activated ability that you can activate with Tyvar, things of that nature. And it seems like there could be a decent Sultai deck based around that in standard. So it's shaping up pretty nicely, and because of that combo, I think this card has a lot of potential. So I put it at number 7. All right, next one, Surge of Salvation, 1 mana. This is a combat trick. It's a protection spell. It says you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, and prevent all damage from black or red sources that would be dealt to creatures you control this turn. Well, so why is this on my list at number 6? Well, we've seen a lot of protection spells in white before, but this is very close to one that we only see in green, known as Heroic Intervention, which protects your entire board. And not only does it protect your entire board with hexproof, it also protects you, your face. So if the opponent tries to invoke Despair you can cast this to counter it. If the opponent tries to target like 2 or 3 of your creatures, sometimes you could protect one of them, but then the other ones would get removed. But this puts hexproof on all your creatures, so it doesn't work that way. And the other relevant thing is, so let's see, the opponent casts like Brotherhood End, which is a 3 mana red sweeper. Well, this prevents all damage from red or black sources that would deal damage to your creatures. So this would stop that from killing your creatures. So really, I just think this is going to make the mono white aggro and the soldiers deck that much more resilient, especially in best of 3 formats, because they can bring this in from the sideboard, and it's going to stop like the mono reds or the Grixis like mid-range decks from being able to sweep the board or kill their creatures. So yeah, it just seems very good. They can even block things now, and then they can prevent the damage and do this in combat and win some combat from that. So it just feels like it's very flexible and most likely main deckable because of that. It reminds me a lot of the what was that called? There's a green mana spell that was 1 mana that would like protect you from everything. That got banned, but I'm drawing a blank on that. So Veil of Summer, I think, Veil of Summer. So it's kind of similar to that. It doesn't draw you a card, but that has that level of protection that is very powerful. So that's why this is number 6. I think it's going to see play in a lot of those aggro decks, especially in best of 3, but probably also in best of 1. All right, coming in at number 5, you've got, oh, let's go to the main card, Invasion of Amonkhet. This is a 1 blue and a black, and it's a battle and has a very nice back side effect as well, which we'll talk about. So this one is just a very high value card. So it comes into the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card. So right off the bat, it's kind of like a divination, kind of. The opponent loses 1 card, you gain 1 card. But the other side of this is that both players mill 3 cards. So if you have any sort of graveyard synergy, you have Underdog, maybe you have some Unearth or some Flashback or things like that, then you're going to get that value off of this mill effect. And then let's look at the backside, which also plays off of the mill effect. So the backside is Lazotep Convert. It says whenever you have Lazotep Convert enter the battlefield, you may have it enter as a copy of a creature in a graveyard. So either yours or the opponent's graveyard. And because it enters as a copy, you get the enter the battlefield effects. So if the opponent is playing Atraxa, you can have this enter as Atraxa and draw, 5 cards or whatever. And the downside is it's not a 7/7, but it would still be a 4/4 with flying, with lifelink, with death touch, and you'd get the ETB effect. So that is really, really powerful. And you can definitely build your deck around that as well to have maybe Atraxa yourself or something else that you want to be copying in the graveyard. So that is a huge effect. And then the front side is already a 2-for-1 effect. Plus you might get some upside on the mill. So potentially this is almost like a 4-for-1 or more in the like ideal situation, and in the worst case scenario it's like a 3-for-1 because you get the discard, the draw, and at some point you'll flip it and you get the creature. So that would be a 3-for-1 if you got that. So really strong, just high value, 3 mana, not a whole lot of cost onto this. The only downside is technically it's not affecting the board. So you can't be in a really losing situation and play this. But that's true with most of the battles we see. There's a few battles that are removal spells, but besides those ones, most of them don't affect the battlefield that much. So I think as long as you have some sort of like reasonable creature deck that or has a lot of removal or something, so where you're not that far behind in the battlefield, you'll be really happy to play this and you'll get a lot of value out of it. All right, so now we are coming to number 4. So number 4 is Sunfall. Sunfall is a 3 and a white. It is a board wipe. It says exile all creatures. So it's not just killing all creatures, exiling all creatures. That's something we only really saw in Farewell. And so that's one reason why this is up here at number 4. And then on top of that, it's not just exile creatures, but it says incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. So typically how it goes is your opponent has like 3 creatures and you might have 1 creature or you might have none, and you cast your sweeper, and that's it. And then you're going to be behind again on the board because they're going to reload on their turn. Well, in this time, you exile the creatures, but you get like a 3/3 or a 4/4 incubation token. And yes, it's not flipped yet, but on your next turn you can pay 2 mana and you can flip it, and you didn't pay that much and you got a reasonable sized creature on the board. Or you can do it later in the game if you're not in a rush. But either way, it is a sweeper. Reasonably cost. 5 mana is maybe one more than you'd want to pay, but we've seen a lot of 5 mana just destroy all creatures. This is 5 mana exile all creatures, which is even better. Plus the incubation effect. So I think this is just a really, really great sweeper. We'll have to see how fast standard is. Best of one has been pretty aggressive. But one of the biggest problems when playing against like soldiers is you couldn't sweep the board because whenever you kill them, they still get some effect from killing them. Or they might have like indestructible or something like that. So exiling all creatures gets around both of those scenarios, meaning it is kind of just the catch-all sweeper. And I think it's going to be really good. All right, so that was number 4. So now we're getting into our top 3. Ready for it? Here we go. Number 3 is Hidetsugu and Kairi. Da, da, da. All right, so this is number 3. And let me just move that so you can read the card a little bit better. But so this is the number 3 one, and it says, when it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards and then put 2 from your hand on top of your library. So it's like a brainstorm effect. You draw 3 and then you put 2 back. And you get to pick the order, which is nice. And then here's the kicker. So whenever it dies, exile the top card of your library and the target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. So you always do that part. So maybe, you have like, I don't know, Fable of the Mirror Breaker or something, and you don't really want to play it. So you just put it back on top. Then they kill this and you deal 3 to their face. Okay, not bad. You made them use a removal. You did 3. You got rid of some cards you don't care about. That's fine, right? Or if you have a lot of instants and sorceries in your deck, then and maybe you have some big instants and sorceries that you are playing around, you put one of them back on the top, and the opponent kills this creature, and then you get to deal that damage. And if it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So I don't know, maybe you put Invoke Despair on the top and they kill this. You get to cast Invoke Despair for free. And you deal 5 damage to their face on top of the damage that Invoke Despair was going to do. That sounds pretty good to me. And I don't know, there's plenty of other instants and sorceries which would be pretty valuable to cast. There's even like the deal 10 to your face one. If you somehow got that combo to work for you, then, you're going to be doing like, actually, how much is it? I think it might cost 10 mana. So if you got that combo off, you would just lethal somebody with 20 damage immediately. So yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans you could do with this. You could even kill it yourself. If you have like village rights or something like that. There's one in the new set. On your upkeep, you could put a stop before you draw, kill your own creature, and then get that cast off guaranteed. So seems very powerful. There's definitely some things you can cheat out with this. Worst case scenario, it's a 5 mana 5/4 flying that draws you an extra card and kind of helps filter your draw a little bit. So yeah, just very solid. Always a 2 for 1, sometimes better. Yeah, and has incentive for the opponent not to kill it. All right, sweet. So that's number 3. We're getting to number 2. Dun, dun, dun. Kroxa and Kunaros at number 2. We can just move this, I think. Hopefully I can move this banner. Okay, yeah, let's move it. All right, so this is a 3 for a red, white, and black. For a 6/6, has Vigilance, Menace, and Lifelink, which Lifelink is a really nice one, and Vigilance also, because it's 6 mana, so if you get it down, you need to not be dying to aggro, and that's one way to help stop that. And then when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may exile 5 cards from your graveyard. When you do, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you play this, and you get Kroxa back from your, you get Atraxa back from your graveyard. Bam! Now you got 2 giant creatures, you got a new hand, and you win the game. And of course, you can do this with any other cards as well. Maybe you want to go into like the full Mardu shell. You could have the angel, the 3/4 flying angel that has lifelink and has kicker, or I don't know. There's plenty of other stuff that you could do with this, but basically it's just another really good reanimation target. Pretty much always going to be a 2 for 1, And when it gets to attack, it can become a 3-for-1 or 4-for-1. Only limitation is you gotta have stuff in your graveyard. But coming down on turn 6, pretty safe to assume you're gonna have at least 5 cards. And if you have any sort of milling in your deck, then you might have more than 5 cards. So very solid card, and that's why it's number 2. All right, and if we go to the number 1 spot, so this is number 1. We got the Tribute to the World Tree. So this is a 3-mana enchantment. And why is this number 1? Back in Throne of Eldraine, there was a card called the Great Henge, which was a very annoying card to deal with. Because whenever you played a creature card, you drew a card. So the mono green opponents would play a creature, draw a card, play a creature, draw a card, etc., etc. And it was just like nonstop. They would just get to play so many creatures because they just kept drawing and drawing and drawing. So this is not as good as the Great Henge, though this is cheaper to cast. I mean, there were some shenanigans to get the Great Henge out for cheap, but yeah, a lot of times it wouldn't get down to maybe turn 4, turn 5, but it did always win, pretty much always win the game when it came down. This one can come down on turn 3, and anytime you play a creature with power 3 or greater, you'll draw a card. And if you don't play a creature with power 3 or greater, you put 2 counters on it. 2+1/+1 counters. So even if you have like Llanowar Elf in your deck, right, and it's like late in the game, you still get Llanowar Elf as a 3/3 instead of just a 1/1 mana dork. So that's a big upside. Your early game creatures become better late game, and your medium sized creatures, power 3 or greater, which probably as early as your 2-drop in most mono green decks, they're all going to draw you cards. So every single creature, basically, except for your 1-drops, are going to draw you cards. That is insane, and the value is just so insane that I think this is enough to make this card just amazing, maybe even good enough to go in like historic in elves. I don't know. There's not that many elves with 3 power, so maybe not. Though if you have some lords down already for your elves, then they're going to be 3 power when they enter, and you'll be drawing a lot of cards off that. So maybe. But it's just an all-star card. The value is just through the roof, and 3 power is a lot different than 4. We've seen 4 in the past, but 3, almost everything, including 2-drops, have 3 power. So yeah, you're gonna get the cards. So that's why this is number 1. The value is infinite on this one. I mean, obviously, if you played on turn 3 and they blow it up, you're gonna be sad. But if this doesn't immediately die, or if you wait to play this till like turn 5 or something like that with a 2-drop, then you've already got your value and you're just going to go to town from there and win the game. All right, so yeah, that's it. That's the number 1 card. Is it enough to bring mono green back into the format? It's tough to say. We did get a few decent green cards in this set, and we got a few in the last one, and maybe with this, it's good enough. We'll have to try it and see. But yeah, let me know what you think about the top 10. Did you have any cards I didn't have in my top 10? I also want to, at some point, look at the last top 10 and see which ones I missed on, because I know I did hit on quite a few of the really good cards. Maybe as the rotation is going to happen, we can go through all these predictions and find out which ones missed the mark. But yeah, that's the top 10 for March of the Machine. Next week, we got the 5 new brews for March of the Machines coming out. So make sure you watch that. And then the early access event, I got into the early access event for the content creators. So please send me some deck ideas that you want to try out, and I'll try to build stuff around those. And tune in on the 14th. I'm going to be playing pretty much from the morning on the 14th until the end of the early access event. And I'm going to be over on Twitch. So I know normally you probably watch my stuff on YouTube, but check me out on Twitch at the same name, Aeneas MTG. And if you don't catch it there, I will probably upload those as YouTube videos later. But it'd be really cool to to see you out there on the Twitch channel, and we can have a fun time and try out the new stuff together. So All right. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about the top 10. And until next time, see ya.